Hello, everybody. This is episode 4. I can't believe it's already episode 4 because I felt like I was working so hard for so long to just get those first 3 episodes out into the world. But now I've done it and I've passed episode 3. So here we are. This is Everything's Relative, a podcast where I, Eve Sturgis, have conversations with people about the way that modern DNA testing has affected them. So welcome, episode 4. Thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in so far and sent me support in all sorts of ways and encouragement. Speaking of that, there are lots of ways to get in or stay in contact with me or to keep up with what's happening with Everything's Relative. So, while I'm thinking about it, make sure you're following our Instagram at Everything's Relative Podcast. And you can join our Facebook page, also called Everything's Relative Podcast. And if you have anything that you want to talk about with me personally, questions, comments, or you want to send me your own story or share your own story on the podcast, email me, Eve, E-V-E, at everythingsrelativepodcast.com. Couple things to go over before we start the good stuff about episode 4. Fun fact, I have not been posting these interviews in order. I've in the order that I collected them. I've been sort of curating them thematically, and so you will hear me say today to Laurie W, "You're the first person I've met." And that's why she was the first interview I ever did. And it felt like now is the appropriate place to put her in the overall story arc. And the other thing to talk about is, actually in that same little beginning, I say, "You're the first person I've met." And she says, "So you're also an NPE." And NPE is something that people have been using in all of the episodes, but it's really important to talk about what that means, I guess, because there's probably people confused or curious. So an NPE, that is an acronym for a non-paternity event or a non-parental event. And it's sort of a genealogical term that's becoming used more and more in this sort of like DNA discovery world. And what it means is it's when you are doing a family tree or your genealogy, and there's a surprise in the lineage. So it usually means the person you thought was your dad is not your biological dad. But it can happen elsewhere within the family tree. But usually when people, so far in my experience, when people say like, "I am an NPE," that means that they found out that their direct mom or dad were not their biological parent. So that's what that word is. It's used a ton, and it's important to know. And there's like a little bit of confusion and discussion about how to use it. Like, is it an adjective, or is it a verb, or is it an event? And it just depends on how you're using it. But I'm not the boss of that word, so I'm not going to say, I just say like it's all of those things. It is an adjective, it is a verb, it is an event. But that's what people are referring to, so that's important to know. And the last thing that I want to talk about is kind of funny. And that, I hope you think it's funny. Another fun fact is that I am very pregnant, which is not doesn't really need to be a part of the podcast. And it certainly isn't something that I was planning on announcing. And we haven't barely told anybody. People know who have seen me face to face, and my family knows, but it's not something that we've made a big hoopla about. But anyway, the reason I'm saying that is that it makes it really hard for me to breathe while I'm talking or while I'm projecting. And some of you have contacted me and have definitely noticed, and I have to also sit with a sound mixer who notices while she's working on these episodes. And it's driving Kalen crazy when I make him listen to these intros and these outros. So I just want to tell everybody I'm really sorry. This isn't forever. I'm grateful you're hanging in there with me and my funny breathing. It's not forever. I will learn to breathe properly soon. Like 8 weeks. Like in 8 weeks, I think I should be able to breathe again. I promise. So I'm working on it. Just wanted you guys to know that I know. That always feels important to me. So, episode 4. Here is me and Laurie W. talking about what it was like to her to uncover the truth behind her birth. Thanks for listening.
You're actually the first person I've met.
Really?
Yeah, in real life, who has had this experience.
Now, you're in the NPE group. Mm-hmm. Are you an NPE?
Yeah.
You are too?
Yes.
So
yes,
you understand this from a cellular level as well.
Totally understand it. Still processing it. Okay, so let's talk about that. How did this all start for you?
I have always been absolutely fascinated by members of my family whom most of them I never met. They were older great grandfathers, and because they came from other countries, and it fascinated me. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it didn't seem to interest too many other people in my family. Nobody else was very curious, but for some reason I just had this burning desire to know. It was, hush, hush, hush. So, and I grew up in the South, interestingly enough, in a small area outside of Atlanta. And if I had, I would ask my school friends when we were in grammar school and even junior high school, where did your grandparents come from? And they went to Decatur, 10 miles away. Or the furthest, the most exotic answer I think I ever got was somewhere in Alabama. But when I was 21, my sister, I have 2 older sisters. One was 16 when I was born, and one was older. 9 when I was born. Okay. So I was talking to the one, when I was about 21, I was talking on the phone to my sister Robin, who's 9 years older than I. And we were talking about something, and it was so long ago that I can't really remember, but I do remember that she put a seed in my head.
Oh, Robin. Okay.
Mm-hmm. She put a seed in my head, and she said, Mother had an affair with this tall, blonde, really nice, good-looking guy. And when you were about 4, you started to look like him.
Oh, Robin. Okay.
And I just went, okay. Mm-hmm. And then we went on and discussed something else.
Interesting.
Nope.
Okay.
Denial is so strong.
It's so strong. I'm learning more about that this year than ever before in my life.
So powerfully strong. And I took that. I remember taking that information in.
So you didn't ask any questions, like, what do you mean Mom had an affair?
I kind of did.
With who?
Yeah, I sort of did. Mm-hmm. I said, well, who was it? And she said it was this guy named Johnny. And now she was only 8 when this was going, 7 and 8 when she was going on. So she was just trying to all make sense of it.
Sure.
And she said his name is Johnny, and at one point he was in the Navy, and he was a CB. He worked construction, and he got stationed at Port Hueneme from somewhere in Illinois. So my mother decided to leave my dad.
Oh, okay.
Take the 2 children and come out here to California and get an apartment near her friend that lived out here, a female friend of the family, and sort of a trial separation from my dad. I think that was a trial separation because she was thinking about hooking up with this guy.
Right.
The Johnny guy.
Right.
I think he was.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think.
Do you know how she met him?
As near as my sisters and I can figure out, she might have met him in a bar.
Lots of people meet that way.
Well, his brother was a bartender.
Okay.
They lived in a small town right outside Chicago, Oregon, Illinois. Mm-hmm. Very small town. It's still a small town. And this guy's brother was a bartender on the weekends at this one corner bar. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure my parents went down to that corner bar frequently when they were young marrieds. And, so I think that's where she met him, but I'm not sure.
Do you know how old she was at the time?
She must have been mid to Well, she was 38 when I was born. So I would
Okay.
say 35.
Mid-30s. Okay.
35. And
So you think she was maybe attracted to this Johnny fellow who was over on the East Coast or over near you,
he was in Illinois.
and then you...
And then, well, this was later, but first he was in Illinois. That's where they met. Then he shifted he came out here to Port Hueneme.
Okay.
And was stationed out here, which is up by Ventura.
Okay, that's what I didn't know.
So
Okay.
he could drive into Whittier.
Oh, I get it.
And she could go up there
He
for
was
the
in
weekends.
California. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that when they separated, she was trying to get away from him, but no, she took y'all closer.
And not me, because
Right,
I wasn't,
and not you.
I wasn't
You
part
weren't
of that
even-
whole
you
deal
weren't
yet.
even a part of the equation. Okay.
So this went on. I think they stayed out here for 3 or 4 months. I know she put my sisters in school in Whittier.
Okay.
And they were okay, but I asked them as an adult. We've had this conversation.
And what
now.
years were this?
This must have been 48, 1950.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a picture
Yeah.
of like
And it was the
what
time.
everybody looked like.
Yeah, the 50s, yeah.
Right, like right after the war.
Yep.
Okay.
Things were pretty austere, but on their way back up. So I remember my one sister saying that our dad back in Illinois was writing my mom letters like, crazy, just daily letters. And my sister, being my mother's child, of course, sneaked into her drawer and read some of them.
Wow.
And told me, she said they were asking her, when are you coming back? Are you coming home? What do I do?
Right.
And then
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do your
That's-
sisters remember that as an emotional, strange time? The way that we would think of a divorce or separation or these days?
they don't.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what they felt at the time, but my family was just one of those families. We didn't talk about things. We didn't talk about feelings.
Right.
I don't know if it was because my parents were both children of immigrants,
Right.
or if they were just both dysfunctional in that way. But
Right.
we just didn't talk about it.
Okay.
We didn't talk about feelings. You got feelings? Okay, fine, feel them. But don't bring them
By
to
yourself.
the dinner table. Yeah,
Right.
don't bring them to the dinner table.
Right, okay.
Go have them in your room. And so we were never, growing up, we were never real sure what we felt because we never got a chance to identify it and
Right.
explain
And
it.
there maybe just wasn't the time and space to
Yeah.
think about how they were feeling at that time. So
I know that my
Okay.
sisters did not like being away from their home and their dad, but it's kind of cool out here in California.
Sure.
And apparently both of my sisters really liked this man, really liked him, and said he was just fun and smart and funny and outgoing
Charming.
and charming and took them lots of places. And my older sister said that for Christmas he bought her an Angora twin set. That when you're 15 years
my
old,
gosh.
that's,
Yep.
that
Totally.
was really dreamy.
50s.
So now something happened, and this remains a question in my mind. The story that I was told my whole life was that when my mother was here in Whittier, my father got notification from his company. He worked for a large insurance company, and he worked in the farm and hail division. So they asked him to go down to North Carolina to become like a field inspector after there was a bad hailstorm or rainstorm
Okay.
or
When
something
you said
like
hail,
that.
I was like, did she mean hail? Like the frozen?
Yes,
the
hail.
frozen stuff.
Very
Hail.
common
Okay.
in North
Sure,
Carolina,
Sure.
and it
Makes
ruins the tobacco crops. So that's all the tobacco farmers would, put in
Right,
for their
okay.
insurance, and he would have to go out there in a hat and coat and a clipboard and look at the damage.
okay.
So they asked him to go down there, and then gradually they moved him down to Atlanta. I was born in North Carolina, but when I was about 6 months old, his company moved him down to Atlanta. But my question has always been, did they really request him to go down there, or did he put in for a transfer because they needed to leave Oregon, Illinois,
Right.
since my mother came back pregnant?
Oh.
That's just a story. That's a possibility that I've outlined for myself.
Okay. Okay.
I'll never know the truth.
You'll
They're
never know.
all gone. They're all dead. So I will never know the truth. And my sisters were told the same thing. There's all kinds of scenarios that have played out in my head.
Right. So you don't even know how pregnant she was.
I don't. Did she know? Or did she discover it once she got back there and just decided to pass me off as his?
Yeah. So you don't even know if your dad ever knew.
No. Although I had a psychic tell me that he did.
Okay.
But, so I just don't know. I question everything. And I never questioned anything before. So, and then to back up. So when I was 21, my sister put this seed of an idea in my head. And I think the reason that she did that was she waited until I was 21. So that she figured, if you want to follow up on this, if you want to go digging around for information, you're 21. You can do whatever you want.
You're an adult. Right. Okay.
But she didn't give me enough information. She just gave me a seed, and it was real easy to just let that seed die in the dark.
Sure.
Which is exactly what I did. Then much later, once I was living out here, and much like 1994, I think it was, my other sister, my older sister, wanted to go to Mac in West Hollywood, but she didn't want to go alone.
Okay.
So she said, "Let's go.
Mac,
go
the
with
makeup
me."
store?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And she didn't want to go alone.
Okay.
And she said, "If you go with me, we'll go to lunch."
Okay.
And that'll be an afternoon. And I said, great. So we went to lunch. We went to the makeup store. And then
Does she live out here? Or
yeah,
okay.
no, she lives in here. She lives here. My other sister lives back in Atlanta still. But so we went to Mac and we went to lunch. And during lunch, somehow the conversation turned to Johnny. And I think I pretty much asked her, by this time I was in my 30s, you know, and I pretty much just went, what do you think? You're the oldest. You were the oldest.
Right.
You were the
15,
most cognizant.
Right. So she would be. She
you
may have been very aware of what was going on.
Yes, but there was a lot of denial there too. You know, it's like, I don't want to know. I want to know. I don't want to know. But so we got into a deep, dark discussion, and she said, you know, I'm pretty sure. And I, it's funny because I always knew something was off.
I was going to ask you that.
I always knew that there was a secret, and it involved me, but I had no clue what it was. And then the rational part of my brain would come in and go, "Don't be silly."
Everybody feels that way.
Yeah,
right.
You've got the two voices: the one that's speaking your truth, and the one that's trying to get it to shut up. And I just knew, and everybody in my family has the same kind of mouth. And it was my father's mouth, and it was like the bowed, you know, the little bow, and very attractive.
More shaped lips.
Yes, almost like a heart shape, almost like Betty Boop.
Right.
Only, you know, natural looking. And I would just stand as a kid and look in the mirror and go, I don't have that mouth.
You didn't get those lips.
I didn't get those lips, and I didn't get that. Gosh darn widow peak everybody else in my family had that was really pretty, and I wanted one. And there was a lot of things, and I just thought, well, and I asked my mom one time, I said, who do I look like? And she said, you look like your grandfather. You look like the Swedish side of my family.
Okay.
So I went, okay, so that's why I don't look like my father.
Right.
Turns out I look very much like my father. And so my sister and I had this conversation and in the restaurant, and she convinced me that it was real. And I said, do you think we can contact him?
Were you able to take in that information at the time at the restaurant?
I was.
Okay.
I was able to take it in and go, okay, so this is really possible. This is possible. This is weird, but it's impossible. You kind of go into another dimension in your mind with it.
Totally.
And
That's a good
my
description.
emotions. Yeah, my emotions were not involved. It was all factual. It was all historical to me, and I wanted details, and I wanted to know, but really in another dimension, nothing to do with my feelings. And she came back to my house after lunch, and we sat on my couch with this was before cell phones.
Right.
Sat on the couch with my phone, my landline, and we made calls until we located him. And my sister got his phone number, and she said, I want to call. And I said, what are you going to say? And she said, I just want to tell him hello after all these years and see if he remembers me. Start a little dialogue.
Okay.
See how that goes. And maybe bring you into the, if it's going well, maybe bring you into the conversation. We'll see.
And was your mother alive at this time?
No.
Okay.
No, she passed. So she dialed the number, and I sat there just, and a woman answered, and my sister said, is John available? And the woman said, I'm sorry, he can't speak. He's very ill, and we don't expect him to last the month.
Oh, okay.
And my sister just got tears in her eyes, and she said, would you please tell him that from years back, I remember him from Oregon, Illinois, and from Whittier, California, and he was very, very good to me, and I just wanted to let him know that he was in my thoughts.
Okay.
And the woman on the phone said, I'll give him the message, and then he died about 2 months later.
Okay.
So had my mother told me before her death in 1988, the father who raised me, the man who I adored, passed away suddenly when I was 15. So that was a traumatic loss.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, especially because in my formative years and in my childhood, and as I've had a therapist tell me once, in utero, I absorbed a lot of her shame, a lot of her fear, a lot of her embarrassment, and a lot of her anger.
I can validate that experience.
Yeah. So there was a lot of that going on from even before I came out.
Totally.
I was born with that. So all my life I feel like I've been dragging around this big bag of dark matter.
Sure.
Secrets and lies and cover-ups and non-truths and untruths and and I realized, and I've always had a problem with shame. I've always had a problem with not being able to act, just being frozen with emotion when something happens, because it's hard for me to identify what I'm feeling because I feel so much at once. And I was, and I was never given the opportunity to break each one down and figure out what that was. First of all, there's no pictures of her holding me as an infant anywhere. None exist.
Oh, interesting.
There's no pictures of me as a toddler with her. There are no pictures of me as a larger toddler sitting on her lap, or even there are pictures of me at my 4th birthday party with her in the background supervising. But it was more like the party was for her. That was,
Right.
So, and I'm looking completely like this in the photos. It's my birthday. It's my party. We've all got on stupid little hats.
Right.
And I'm going,
You're just blank.
get me out of here. So I find that very telling.
Totally.
And she palmed me off on my sisters because they were built-in babysitters. My older sister took me to all my pediatrician appointments.
Oh, wow.
And she took me on dates.
Okay, like literally just pawned you off.
Literally. In fact, people would gossip and think that maybe I was her sister, but my mother was raising me as hers so that no one would look at my sister skew-eyed. But no, I was not hers, but she took care of me. And then when she moved away, which she obviously had to, as an adult, she went to college. She came out here and studied at Pasadena Playhouse. So then my other sister, who was 9 years old with me, then she took over. And she wasn't able to take me to pediatrician's appointments and things like that, but she could babysit me all day long.
Right.
And that's what she did.
And was your mom working?
I believe, yes. I believe she had a job at the time. And I think she was working part-time. I don't think she worked every day, but she still...
She had lunches or something. It's fine.
She had things.
Yeah, she had things to do.
She had things. So, so I owe both of my sisters a great debt of gratitude for bringing me up and making sure that I was fed and diapered and had clothes on me and didn't run out in the street and kill myself. So I thank them for that. After, so I was really interested in this whole ancestry, and I wanted to track the Irish side of the family, and I wasn't having much luck. And for Christmas 2 years ago, my darling husband gave me an Ancestry DNA kit because he knew I was really jonesing on that stuff.
Right. So you already knew this one variable, but you wanted to see the whole picture.
When I got the Ancestry DNA kit, I swear to God, I never even thought about the paternity thing.
Oh.
I never even thought about that. I never thought about, oh, now this is going to give me the answers that I really need. All I wanted to make sure of was that I was what I was told that I was.
Wow, okay.
Am I really Irish? Am I really Swedish? Am I really German?
So after this John man passed away, you just sort of put it away.
I did.
Yeah.
I did, because what's the use of delving into it now?
No question. Yeah.
I can't go to my mom,
No
and I
answers,
can't go to the man who raised me, and I can't go to my biological father and say, hello, surprise.
Was he alive at the time?
Well, he died in 94.
Okay.
So he's been gone a while, and so 2 years ago, get this ancestor kit, and all I wanted to do was find out my nationality. I just wanted to confirm that the family stories had been accurate.
Right.
Because so many weren't. And it was very exciting, and I got my results, and I kept seeing, here's people sharing my DNA. Wow, how fascinating. Who are these people?
And that's all online? Okay.
Yeah. And you can sign up for an email from Ancestry, so you get it in your email saying you have a new match. And all of a sudden one day, I remember I had gone out for a couple mile hike, and this was about a year and a half ago. It'll be 2 years in April. April 27th, I remember the day.
How you remember so clearly
Somehow
these moments.
I remember that. And I came home, and I was walking. I had been on this nice little hike by myself, and I came home and heard a little ding, and I have a new email. My email says you have a new match, and I saw the name. And then I looked at how we're matched, and I saw a whole list of the same name, and that's when it hit me. That's when the coin dropped from the mind to the body,
right,
to the knowing, the suspecting and the okaying to the this is it,
right,
this is real,
from a fact to an existential emotional experience.
And that was one of the strangest moments. And you wouldn't think, since I had already had wind of it, that it would hit me with such force, but just the seeing it. The confirmation that blood doesn't lie. DNA doesn't lie. Right. And that was my paternal family. I was just... I think I just sat there on the couch for about an hour.
Yeah, no, I understand the feeling like, all right, I mean, I've heard from other people say, I've always suspected, or I always thought it was this other person, but it wasn't until they got the email or the letter in the mail that just like changes the whole experience from an idea to
a possibility,
to everything you are or something. It just changes.
And that's what everybody said. And that's one of the hardest things, the most difficult things about this situation. Besides the fact that it'll blow a hole in you emotionally.
Yep.
When you least expect it. I'm normally pretty even emotionally, But this just... I've been through years and years of therapy. I mean, I know what's going on in my head, and I know what my flaws are, and I know what my weaknesses are. I'm pretty self-aware. But this news literally shot a hole in me in every possible way. It blew my mind. It blew my stomach. It blew my whole notion of myself and my reality just out of the water. And what people say what people have said when I told them, because I was so cavalier about it in the beginning, I would just go, "Oh, guess what I found out?"
Yeah, totally. It's so hard not to, because
for the first month and a half, 2 months, I was like, "Oh, guess what I found out?"
Because it's coursing through your body like at all times.
But it's the story of it. 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 And I didn't start the emotional. I didn't start the tears and the literally ugly crying, like crying like a 3-year-old, where you just can't breathe anymore and your face gets real red. I didn't start that for months, months afterwards. I was very flip about it at first, and I guess it's a form of self-protection. Because I think I knew what it was going to do to me,
Right.
and it finally did.
Maybe it just takes that long to settle in. Maybe
I think you have to let it.
Yeah, because I had a similar experience, but just didn't. I just had to process the information out loud over and over and over
Me
again
too,
for a while.
and that's why I would tell people, and their reactions were they were all pretty much the same. At first, it was just an interesting story. It was wow, that's amazing. I got some new shoes the other day.
Right.
Macy's, and I'm thinking, okay. But see, it doesn't make any difference. Your life was your life. You had a father that loved you and cared about you. And it doesn't change anything. And my response to that became, on the surface, from your point of view, no, it changes nothing. For me, it changes everything.
Totally.
Everything. I went back, and in the last 2 years, what's been going on? Well, one thing that my sister said that made me feel a little better about the whole thing was that she said, you know what, Mother seemed really happy when we were in Whittier. She seemed happy. She laughed a lot, and her spirit was lighter. And I said, do you think that's because she was in love with him? And she said, I think they had very, very deep feelings for one another. But he was also married to someone who was home in Illinois.
Oh.
While he was stationed out here.
Oh.
Yeah, so they were both married to other people.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But when my sister said,
Okay.
Mom seemed happy with him. She seemed happy when we were in Whittier, and they had fun together. And I thought, oh my God, maybe she wanted to really leave my dad. Maybe she wanted to start her life with this guy. But because he was in the Navy, maybe he wasn't ready to take on a 15-year-old
Right.
and an 8-year-old.
Right, a family of 4 all of a sudden, yeah.
You know, and it's like, ooh, but I don't know. I will never know. I will absolutely never know.
And you think their relationship was about 3 months?
I think it was probably about a year.
Oh, okay.
Because I found out later that they met in, see, I never
'cause
knew
they
the
met-
story of how
they
they met.
met in
but
Oregon,
they met
Illinois.
in that tiny little
Right.
town.
Right.
And carried on. And the reason that I know this is because once I started getting these matches on Ancestry with this last name, one of them was his niece. I found his niece. So this woman's
That's close.
father was this man's brother.
Right.
So I, with a lump in my throat and holding my breath, I tapped out a little message to her saying, I have recently done an Ancestry DNA tag. And I said, I believe our connection is from your Uncle John. And if you're interested, if you want to discuss this, get back to me.
Oh, that's
And-
pretty.
Well, I
pretty
was.
neutral, or
It was. I
you
didn't want to
you
come on
just
strong.
drop all the bombs on them right away.
Well, no, because what if they thought, oh my God, she's out for some money,
Right.
or she's trying to pull, something.
These
What
are the
is-
things I don't even think about until I'm reading those support group posts, and
Never.
I'm like, oh gosh, I guess there's just a lot of people with a lot of suspicion and skepticism out there.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And I didn't want them. They still live in this small town in Illinois. They still
Wow.
live there, the whole family. And I'm all the way out here, and I thought, I'm not looking for another family. I'm a big grown-up
Right,
girl.
right,
I got
right.
my own. I got plenty of fam. And but I just wanted to make the connection and just say hello. And so we started talking, and I told her about my mother and her Uncle John having this affair and la la la. And that's when she said, well, my dad was the local bartender down, and that's when I went,
All the pieces or more
maybe
pieces
that's
start
how
to fall
they
into place.
met. And so I sent her pictures. I asked her, I said, one thing I would like is, do you have a picture of your Uncle John? I've never seen one, and I would like to know what my biological father looks like, since I think I look like him. And I added to that request, I put 3 pictures of me. One when I was 3, one when I was 12, my school picture when I was
Perfect, yeah.
12, and one as an adult. And within 5 minutes, her response was, oh my God.
You're definitely his.
Oh my God. It's like looking at his face. And she found one of the whole family and sent me one. And then she found one of him later on as an older man and sent me that. And it was hard to see. It's hard to look at a picture of someone you share DNA with but have never met, and you share physical traits with.
Yeah.
And go, what am I supposed to feel here? I want to feel something, but I'm not sure what it is. I never met him.
Right.
And that brings up the whole nature nurture thing. How much of my personality is from the dad who raised me? And what personality traits did John have that I might have? I don't know.
I'm always fascinated by families that all look alike. Like when all the siblings are obviously siblings, or everybody's obviously the moms or the dads. I always wanted that. And didn't have that.
Me too.
So yeah, it is the physical traits. Like, oh, there it is.
And as an adult, all I wanted to do after I became a teenager, all I wanted to do was be different. But as a young forming human being, as a little kid, I think you need to feel that feeling of belonging. You're part of the pack.
The tribe, yeah.
You're part of the pack. You're part of the tribe, and you all look alike. And I've had people say to me in the presence of both of my sisters, you guys don't look alike, but I can tell you're sisters because your mannerisms, the inflection in your voices, you know. So that's nurture. So my father was my oasis, especially with my mom not really being.
Yeah,
once my older sister, when I was 9, the sister who is 9 years older than me moved away.
Right.
So I was an only child.
You were just there with your mom.
I was just there with my mom, and I didn't.
Who
like
was not warm.
But
to you.
my father was there, and that made all the difference because he was my partner in crime. He liked the Beatles. So when we were in the car together, we could listen to the Beatles on the radio, and he liked the same things I did. So losing him at 15 was very, very tough.
Hard. I don't know anybody that could I don't know that one could ever get over that.
And so also the denial that I felt with that was super strong. So that when the truth finally hit, the truth bomb exploded the day that I saw the DNA results and I knew the truth. My father's death at 15 had been stuck somewhere in my psyche. So in addition to finding out he was not my biological father, we shared no DNA, it was like I lost him again.
You lost him twice.
And that's why sometimes when I start talking about it just, because I think this stuff has been so buried in my emotional sack that I keep things stored in that I don't want to deal with. I think it's been so buried for so many years that it's going to take a long time for it to all get out, and I think of it like an emotional boil. It gets infected and it gets nasty, and then all this stuff comes out, and it's icky, and it's painful. But I find that I have days where it's at the forefront of my mind all the time, and then I have days when I'm okay. You know, I'm handling it. Things are fine, but every once in a while, a memory or a song or a fragrance, or just usually it's just a memory. It's like somebody hits me on the back of the head with a brick.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's right. And I'm starting to get a little bit interested in this man, John.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing some searching about his family, which is fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I start fantasizing about what would it have been like had we met?
Mm-hmm.
And would we have been friends? Would we have gone and done things together? Would we have gone down to the corner bar and had a beer?
I don't know. I mean, I just don't know if any, I'll find out as I talk to people, but I don't know if anyone cannot think of those things.
And then I feel like I'm being disloyal to the wonderful man who raised me.
Right.
And then I get all emotional. Mm-hmm. I feel guilty. And I know that if he was sitting here in this room, he'd say, no, you need to find this out for yourself.
Right.
I want
he would
you
support
to know your
journey.
truth.
Yeah.
I want you to know your truth. It didn't change. It doesn't change us. But, I feel so bad. And I feel so sad that if he knew, if he agreed to raise another man's child to the extent that he did with me, to the wonderful care he gave me, I just think he is my hero. Mm-hmm. And I feel so sad that I lost him without one ever even being able to say goodbye. It was sudden. It's not like, a lingering illness where you can go and just visit and say, I love you, I love you, I love you. I never got that chance. So now my heart is broken in two places.
Sure.
Once because he died, and once because he wasn't my real father. But he was my real father. I don't like to use that language.
I know. We don't have enough.
Yeah.
We don't have the words for these relationships because
we don't.
Even the other day, I was trying to explain it to somebody, and I said something. Yeah, just something. One of the mundane things, like, oh well, my dad is my real dad, but my not dad. I said, And this person felt the need to interrupt me and say, like, well, the man that raised you is your dad. But the other man is and she felt, and it was so interesting because that's clearly about her,
Yeah.
I was like,
I know.
Okay, like I don't need you to explain who my relationships are with these men, but
and how I feel about it.
Right, and who's real and who's not, and what blood means, and what but she was somehow triggered by my description of who was who, and I find that happens. People really want to jump in and so that's what I'm saying. There's not enough language for who's the words real dad and
when
not
I say
real dad.
That sounds
what
like,
the heck does that mean?
You're not my real dad.
Yeah,
That
totally.
sounds like something a nasty 5-year-old would say. And
Yeah.
that's not how I mean it. But real, they were both real.
Right.
They were both human beings.
Right.
One sperm was just one sperm.
Yeah.
That's the winner. That was the winner that night, and that's it. I try not to, and I'm trying to come to the comfort level in knowing that it is what it is, and my life is my life. But now that I know, I think it opens things up in a lot of areas. It does. It opens up parts of my brain, and it opens up parts of my imagination. I daydream a lot about him. I wanted to know, because I know my father, my dad, the guy who raised me, I know his personality. I remember his jokes. I know what kind of music he liked. I know everything.
Right.
And I wanted to know about this guy. And so I said, did he like music? What kind? Did he like to dance? Was he artistic in any way? What were his hobbies? What was he passionate about? All that kind of stuff.
Right.
And basically the only answer I got was, well, He loved to fish, and she sent me a picture of him with a bunch of fish
Fishing. Okay.
that he had caught. And she didn't know about the music.
And do you know if that niece has told the other family members? Do they all know about you?
I believe they do. She just lost her mom about 2 weeks ago. She had been in a nursing home. She was physically frail, but the niece said sharp as a tack. So she said, we're going to visit Mom this Sunday. If you want to send me some pictures of your mom, maybe she would
Maybe they're okay.
remember him. So I found a picture of my mother, which would have been right around that time, right around those years. And I messaged it to her, and she took her phone, showed it to her mom, and her mother said, oh, yes, I remember her. John used to bring her around all the time. So
Okay.
they were out.
Right.
They were
not like
out.
a
It's not like
clandestine secret.
no. It's not like meet me in the next
affair,
town at
nothing
the No-Tell
scandalous.
Motel.
Right.
They were driving around this little tiny town and going to his brother's house.
Right, with his girlfriend.
With his
Even though he
girlfriend.
was married to someone else.
Exactly. And I think it must have gone down like my mother says, look, I'm not sure what I want. I don't know if I want you. I don't know if I want him. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to take the girls and I'm going to go out to Whittier for a while and make up my mind. Well, that was a lie. She wanted to
Right.
come out here so she could be closer to him.
Right.
But I do think that might have been, they might have been good for each other at the time. But since he went on to get married 2 more times
Right.
after her, I wonder,
Well-
did he really love her? Was she his one?
Well, that's why I asked if they'd only been together 3 months, and even a year doesn't change my question so much, but I wondered if that's just long enough to have a sort of perfect relationship.
Exactly.
It doesn't get
messy.
Doesn't get messy. 3 months is even more ideal.
Yeah.
To a year is about so it may have only been wonderful.
Well, exactly.
Regardless of what it would have been like in the long term.
Totally. And there's also that clandestine excitement about
Totally.
it. That you've got a wife and I've got a husband, but we're together and we're doing this thing.
Do you think about your mom being like 30? When did she marry your dad? Like when she was 20? So young?
Yeah, they were in their early 20s.
So if you think about raising kids, and especially at that era, raising 2 girls, being a wife,
Yep.
same husband all this time, and then this sort of new, exciting opportunity presents itself, and you're
Exactly.
35, and you've never had any
And
fun.
here's a tall, blonde, good-looking
right,
drink of water
he likes you, yeah.
who thinks you're the bee's knees. And yeah, that would be very seductive. I think my mother had a problem with men. I think she had a self-esteem problem because we talked about, my sisters enlightened me to the fact that, oh, well, that guy wasn't the only one. He wasn't the first.
Wow. Okay.
And he wasn't the last.
Oh.
So that opened up a whole nother window to look out of.
Yeah, wow.
Which
That's a twist that I didn't see coming. Okay.
I remember things in my childhood. I remember one time when my mom got me out of bed at about, well, it seemed like the middle of the night
Right.
to me. I was
Right.
I was
Who knows
4.
what time it was, right?
It was probably 9:30, and put on my coat and said, we're going to go to the donut shop. And I thought, okay,
Night donuts.
night
Okay.
donuts, let's go.
Okay.
Hot chocolate. And I remember sitting in a donut shop what seemed like the middle of the night in my pajamas with a coat over it. And my mother is sitting next to me, and there's a man sitting next to her, and they're having a conversation. We're at the counter, and she's turned her stool away from me. They're facing each other, and I've got my donut and my hot chocolate with extra whipped cream. So I'm just kind of into that.
You're happy. What?
I remember similar situations of
Oh.
that type. See, my dad used to have to go out of town.
I was going to ask if he
frequently.
traveled. Mm-hmm.
He used to have to
'Cause he
go
had to
from
go to farms,
Atlanta up
yeah.
to North Carolina after a big storm,
Sure.
and he'd be gone for a couple of days, and then he'd come home. And that's when those little clandestine meetings would happen.
Do you remember what kind of donut it was?
Yes, it was a raspberry filled.
Oh, those are the best.
A raspberry filled. Oh,
So good. I love those.
And I remember similar incidents when she would get me out of bed at odd times of the day. And what did I do with this information? I
Right.
never told
Just
my
tucked
father
it
about
away.
it. I
You never told your dad
I
about
never
it.
said a word. Why? Why did I
Right.
not say anything? But I think that was self-protection.
Right. Because
Because
somewhere deep
he
inside
might
you
have
knew
gotten-
something. Yeah.
He might have gotten mad and left my mom. And then I would have had to stay with her, which ended up happening anyway.
Right.
But he had to die. He had to die to leave her. But yeah, all kinds of weird stuff. So that made me look at my own experiences with men and my own dysfunctions because, nature, nurture.
Sure.
And
Yeah. Oh, wow.
like my biological father was not the first. So it's been a process, and I think it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
Do you wish that your mother had told you? Or that you
Yes.
had known? You do.
I do wish she had told me. I wish, part of me wishes she would have told me after my father died. I was 15.
15 is so young
You
to
know,
process
and she
that
could
kind
have
of thing.
waited until the sadness and the shock of that were over. She could have waited a year or two. But then I really, really wish she would have been honest. And I think sometimes I have these intense feelings of anger towards her for not being honest and for being so crazy when I was little. And, and thinking that I was a mistake and a problem that she was ashamed and embarrassed about. I wish we could have had a dialogue about that. Had she told me when I was 18 years old or 20, I could have been in touch with my biological father. I could have had a
You could have
relationship
had
with
some
him.
Yeah, time.
Maybe we wouldn't have liked each other. Who knows? I mean, I had a feeling we would. And on the other hand, I also think about maybe my memory of the father who raised me. Maybe that is a little bit idealized because when he died when I was 15, so that was right on the cusp of me becoming an independent teenager.
Yeah, absolutely.
Driving, having political opinions, but we never got into the Vietnam thing because it was never an issue. We never got into any kind of political stuff.
Right.
Because it never happened. Maybe he wouldn't have liked, my husband. I don't know. Maybe we would have fought like fathers and daughters
Well, it's
fought.
the same thing as sort of as those short, we're talking about the perfect relationships.
Exactly.
Like you got right at 15 is right when that all starts to change, and you didn't get that, so you have only an idyllic
Exactly.
memory of
So
him.
my boy, we might have had some, I don't know. I just don't know. We could have had some knockdown dragouts politically because I was of that generation. I was the 60s generation.
Right.
I started out for Woodstock and never made it.
Oh.
It was a mess. It was a mess. And I just thought, it's not that important.
Never mind.
It's not this
There will be
important.
other music festivals.
Yeah, really. They're going to make a movie about it. We'll
Right.
just watch it
It's
on the
gonna be
big
fine.
screen. So, but I mean, that was my generation. And I protested and I voted for peace. And I voted for peace, but I couldn't vote yet. But, so we could have been on different ends of the spectrum there. But, so I don't know. This whole thing has just been a ride. And I know it's not over yet.
So, do you have advice for people that are just entering this world or are just finding out? You don't have to.
I have I think every situation, even though it's all under the same umbrella, and some situations are very, very similar, there are so many different scenarios how this plays out. Like yours is different than mine. There's so many, and when I read people's experiences about being rejected,
Yeah.
oh my God,
That is a whole. It is a world that is blowing up in a way that I just don't think anybody
I'm
considered. Like,
I'm watching this like a TV show.
I'm dying to know if 23andMe thought of that before. I mean, or when I say 23andMe, I sort of mean that as a collective name of all these little companies.
all of the companies, all of the testings.
They like, oh, we're going to be blowing, and I know that they're getting a lot of flack for it now, but I don't know. I don't know.
Movement.
There's just a whole world that we just didn't.
And it's a whole movement. And it's raw now. It's raw. It's in the beginning stages of organization. You're doing a podcast about it. It's been, it's been on television. It's been featured on shows.
It is no longer just a British murder mystery plot twist, right? It's like everywhere.
And that's the movement, though. The fact that this is happening not just to me but to like thousands and thousands and thousands. And right after the holidays, a lot of people got those tests.
Gifts. I know.
And there's more and more and more and more and more every single day.
I wonder if we're going to be the last. I don't know. I don't know if there will like the last generation of this happening. If this is a one-time, I keep thinking this is going to be a one-time experience. Because younger generations will be prepared for this.
Yes.
So the secrecy will be treated differently.
And the secrecy, now it differed from family to family, but mine, I think, was family, but it was also the times.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
My mother just would have been, you might as well just pin a big red A on her.
Right, totally.
But yeah, it was the times. It's like, oh God, no. Right. And then that makes me question, did my dad's company really transfer him?
There's thousands of us, right?
Yes.
And there's a pretty big age spread, but there are thousands of these people finding out, which means there's thousands of mothers holding this secret.
Yes.
And what if they had all known what if they'd all known that everybody was doing this?
Exactly.
What if they'd all known that every other household was struggling with this at some point?
Exactly.
Would the experience of shame have been different? And then would our experiences of shame been different?
Well, I think
would our whole country's treatment of shame be different? I'm really interested in that.
I think the 60s took a lot of shame out of it. And for people who are just starting out, I don't think that they're going to be quite as upset or shocked as we were.
I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope people are at least understanding the possibility. Well, I don't know. I feel like it happens to everybody else and not to me problem.
Well, and
it's really...
I got into a conversation with someone who pointed something out to me that I felt was rather poignant for me, and that was her belief, and this goes into all the woo-woo different beliefs and that everyone has and everybody's different, but I've heard this many, many times, and I understand the concept, but it's always been like, well, I don't know, it could be true, I don't know. But she believes that we have in another dimension, we have a soul band of people that we are journeying with and we are learning from, and they help us. They don't always choose to reincarnate the same time that we do. So if we're here and they're there in that dimension, they can still help us. They can still, give us energy and help us along and put things in our path maybe that we need. Sometimes
I can get behind that idea.
Sometimes we agree to reincarnate together for specific reasons, and that we are here to learn something. And we know when we're on that dimension, we decide what it is that we need to know and we want to know, and that we're going to work on that in this carnation. And so we choose our situation, and we choose our parents, and we choose our siblings, because we know that they are going to help us do what we need to do on this planet. Now, it sounds absolutely bizarre, but when I think about that in that context, when I think about this situation in that context, I think, okay, so I decided this. When I was in another dimension, I decided that this was going to be my lesson.
So what is the lesson?
What
are you learning?
I mean, what am I learning? That causes me to go deeper and deeper.
Is that the process? Right. You may not have an answer.
And even though it's a real kind of a bizarre concept, it works for me to tunnel down into those emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And try to figure out which ones are real, which ones are not, and to work it all out. Because if I asked for this, why am I surprised?
Right.
We wrote a script in another place, and we all came down, and then when you're born, you kind of forget it. You don't realize that. But as we were talking about earlier, children and babies especially are wide open psychically, and they see things, I think, that we don't see, and they feel things that we don't think they can feel, but they can. They're very intuitive. And I wonder about that. I just wonder that, did I give myself a narcissistic mother who couldn't stay faithful to a man so that she would get pregnant by someone else and then go through this whole charade
it's
of
an
my
elaborate
life?
script.
It really is.
If you designed this one,
You know,
you were
sometimes
really
you just
going
want to
for
go,
some melodrama.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the easiest suggestion or the easiest ideas.
Right,
is
but
the
maybe
truth.
in your
It's
next script, you'll have a very, very basic life with no surprises.
Why? What did I do?
Right,
in
maybe
another
you're like,
life
well, I
that would
learned that
make me
lesson,
need to
and
learn
then
this now?
next
Was I
one.
a terrible mother?
Oh.
Was I a terrible father? Was I an incorrigible child? I don't
Right.
know, but
How strange.
I know it's a journey.
Yeah, it is a journey. This is so fun for me. Thank you so much,
You are
Maureen,
very welcome
for coming over, because this is you are officially the very first person of Everything's Relative podcast.
What a
And
great what a great idea
well,
for a
it just-
podcast, because it's so timely.
It feels so. It feels. I mean, it was fun. I mean, it was like, this was fun to do. Yes.
Yes.
But it feels. There's something resonating inside me that I didn't know or would happen, because you're the first person I've talked to.
It's very cathartic.
That is shares this experience with me.
It's very cathartic.
It is cathartic to talk about it.
I have discovered, because I wouldn't talk about it for so long.
Well, nobody wants us to talk about it,
Nobody wants us to talk about it,
but there's so many of us, and
nobody understands
Yeah.
it. They get a general idea,
Right.
but then they give you the platitudes. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, well, you had to do.
I even had a friend who went through something similar to this in college, and I remember thinking, like, wow, that's weird, or that's intense, but I certainly didn't
No,
say anything helpful. I'm sure.
no.
Sure, I was like,
And
wow.
it's there's so many of us now, and it's a movement. It's a movement.
It'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
You're
for
welcome.
coming.
Thank you. This was fun.
I cried really hard after Laurie W left my house that day. And I'm still not sure I can put words to what happened or why I cried. Her story was really moving, but it also had to do with the sort of strange sensation of meeting someone in real life, in real time, and in the flesh, who understood really for real what it feels like to find out you're not who you thought you were, or you're not where you're from, you're not from where you thought you were from, or however you want to describe the NPE experience. It was a couple months ago now that I actually met Laurie W. We did that interview, but and I get overwhelmed like that less and less. I don't have big crying fits anymore, but it still can pop up with like kind of a raw intensity when you least expect it. And I'm finding out that that's pretty common for people. And I think maybe another reason that I cried was that interviewing Laurie W. meant that I was really doing this project. And really going to talk about some personal realizations and really move forward with this sensitive subject, using my name and publicizing it to people and knowing about me and people that know my family. And honestly, like, not all of my own family doesn't even know about this yet at the time of this recording. We're all moving through it at our own pace, and I feel like there's a lot to navigate and a lot of people's feelings to consider. And I know that I have my story, and the other people involved have their own stories. But it's hard for me to just not consider the way that it affects them. And I think that that's something that even some of the people I interview talk about. They don't want people's names named, but here I am using my own name. So that wasn't an option for me. Didn't feel like an option to me. Didn't feel like it would be real. So, and I really want to eliminate the stigma around this and eliminate the shame. And part of that is to not hide my name. So Laurie meant I was really doing it, and meeting with her and the powerful feelings I felt and the feedback I got from her made me feel really determined to go through with it. So I did. And here we are, already on episode 4. So thanks for listening, and I hope you'll stick around for episode 5. Bye. Bye, everybody. Talk to you later. This episode was produced by Eve Sturgis and Kaylin Egan. Logo designed by Ivy McNally. Music used with permission by Goodbye the Band.